that's a story for another time. Let's talk more about this Bucks-Raptors game and just kind of big picture here. I've got a couple points to make. When you look at this Raptors roster, I've noticed now they're starting DeAndre Bembry. Lowry is out, and, Nick Nurse shuffles the rotation. Sharpshooter Matt Thomas. They draft Terrence Davis out of Ole Miss. I think we all know now about Chris Boucher, right? And what I'm getting at here is, at what point do other teams and front offices start to poach players that have gone through the Raptors organization? And not even necessarily that the Raptors had, but what I would be doing is I would be kind of trailing what Masai Ujiri and the Raptors are doing. Oh, if they've brought in a player for 3 workouts during the combine, or they had a guy in their G League system that they called up once or twice, and for whatever reason he slipped back through the cracks, like I'm sniffing around their players that they try to bring in and are interested in, because they have the ability to find these diamonds in the rough. Now, I guess then you ask yourself the question, is it their development? Is it that they have a special eye for the talent, or is it their developmental process that makes these guys something? Either way, if I'm another organization, I'm sniffing around players that the Raptors are interested in, because they keep finding these guys. And I liked DeAndre when he was in Atlanta. I know he's not a guy they necessarily found, but he's serviceable. I thought that, didn't he end up in a Brooklyn trade and then they let him go? But he's a strong athlete. He plays aggressive, and you think there's a spot for him on your bench. And what do you know? He winds up in Toronto. I had said, I expected the Bucks to come out and full throttle and really kind of jump on this Raptors team. And you saw Brent Forbes start the game 3 of 3 from downtown. And it also got me thinking, does a certain system make shooters better? Now, obviously, a non-shooter isn't going to become a shooter in a system. But someone like a Brent Forbes, who's he's a decent shooter now, is a really good shooter. And that begs the question, is it the pace? Is it getting it to him in his right spots? Or is it just the true green light that he's given within, Bud's system? Just some food for thought, because doesn't it seem like that? You see a guy on a team, he's advertised as a shooter, or he's an all right shooter, and then he goes somewhere else and he becomes like a knockdown guy, and you're like, well, did he just put in work, or is it the system? Is it the culture? There's no way to truly measure that, but I think it's a question that I think we need to examine more. So he starts off hitting a bunch of threes. I don't have a whole lot of details because the game, they kept him at arm's length the whole time. But I have some big picture thoughts as far as the Bucks, the defense, allowing all those threes. I think it goes without question. Look, Drew Holiday is going to make a ton of difference, right? You're missing arguably the best guard defender in the league, right? He's not a wing. He can guard wings, but when we're talking guards, Drew's that guy, right? That's what the players will tell you. That's huge. But you look at the rest of their guards, DiVincenzo, Connaughton, DJ Augustine. They're small, man. There is a low ceiling to what they can provide defensively, ultimately. And I get that the hope is you've got all this size behind them. And that's not even to say they're that bad. Connaughton is a really good athlete. DiVincenzo's a good athlete. But again, it's more of a size thing. None of them are over 6'4". Augustine is 5'10" on a good day. So there's ultimately a size issue there, I think, right? And then you bring in Bobby Portis, who is an offensive player. So when you kind of look at the personnel moves, Drew was supposed to kind of fill that huge gap, but you get rid of Wes Matthews. I can't help but think Crowder would have been great for them, right? I think they just need a little more size on that perimeter. So I think, if you're a Bucks fan and you want to be optimistic, you say, well, Drew will get back healthy, and in the playoffs, the rotation will shorten, and we won't have to have Augustine out there that long, right? And, and even Forbes, who I brought up, the shooter, what does he go, 6'3"? They don't have any long, big guards. And so you wonder if they could fill that spot. I'll talk about the G League here in a little bit, but on the buyout market or some sort of trade between the lines to get a bigger guard. I got to say that big picture, overall, I don't really like the direction that Giannis is headed. I don't like the way he's playing. I think it's time for Giannis to stop shooting threes. And you watched him come down the court, and he's trying to like hit crossovers and Hezis and handle the ball. Giannis looks like he's trying to play like he's Kevin Durant, and he's not. He doesn't have that skill set. To me, develop a go-to move in the paint and find a free throw routine that works. His free throw routine is too long. You see him, he tells the ref, hold the ball. And then he goes through a ghost motion, right? And then when he gets it, he holds it and freezes himself at the line. Meanwhile, he's got his brother over on the sidelines knocking on wood literally every time he shoots a free throw. That's too much. The general rule is the worse a free throw shooter you are, the less time you should take at the line. That's my opinion, because that just allows more time for you to get in your head. You need to simplify things. Less is more. And then as far as the offensive game goes, he's wasting his time out on the perimeter with these moves. Pull up threes, crossovers, hang dribbles. Get your butt in the paint, bro. And what I would like to see is, I think it may have been in the past I said, go work with the dream. And asking someone to learn the dream shake and that stuff is probably too ambitious. But how about go work with Kevin Garnett? KG came out recently. He was listing some players that he would like to work with. James Wiseman, the new big ticket, some of these guys. Go model your offense after KG. Now, Garnett was not nearly as thirsty to score as Giannis, right? Garnett was content with his 15 points. He just wanted to win. He was more of a playmaker, if you will. But where KG would operate there on the high elbow, he'd catch and he'd face up real quick and jab and shoot, or he would jab, pump, and rip through. And then the final aspect of that was sometimes he would just face you up and go or face you up and spin. But it was all out of just basically a face-up move at the elbow. And that's where I think Giannis could be spectacularly efficient, and it could be a move that he falls back on, a go-to move late in games, because we know he wants the ball late in games. We've seen it doesn't work out. Very hard to double if he catches that like at the nail, because it's in the middle of the floor. It's like the Bruce Lee philosophy, right? I fear not the man who practiced 10,000 kicks once, but I fear the man who practiced one kick 10,000 times. It just, to me, sums up perfectly what you're seeing with Giannis's offensive game. He's trying to do all this stuff, just perfect one spot on the floor where you can build counters out of it. And so, yeah, man, I just don't like where that's headed. And obviously, I think Drew can fix a lot of they've got to find some bigger guys, a couple more defensive-minded guys. I know Torrey Craig was brought in. Maybe you give him more of a role. I don't know. He's a suspect offensive player. But, yeah, there's reasons to be concerned here. I think that what you're seeing Nick Nurse and this Raptors team is showing you, like, you probably don't want to line up with them in the brackets. Like, just stylistically with Anunoby and Siakam and their personnel, styles make fights. And it doesn't seem like Milwaukee wants to play that style of fight.